So hi everyone, welcome to this session. My name's Ella. I am Business Development Manager at blooloop, and I'm so excited to introduce our speaker for this session, Eddie Sotto. Eddie is an experiential designer and industry veteran who's worked across the attractions industry in a series of roles, including Six Flags, Knott's Berry Farm, Universal Studios Hollywood. Eddie spent 13 years with the Walt Disney Imagineering, being brought on by Tony Baxter to work on Main Street USA for Euro Disneyland, and going on to work on a variety of projects, including the master planning of Tokyo Disneyland for 3 years, Pooh's Honey Hunt, Mission Space, and a whole series of Disney rides and attractions. Eddie was part of the Imagineering Story, the behind-the-scenes documentary on Walt Disney Imagineering, currently showing on Disney+. And most recently, Eddie has founded Sotto Studios, a creative agency specializing in highly themed and exotic projects from the world's biggest brands like Ferrari, Microsoft, Google, and Universal, including exotic jets like the one behind you. Is that right? Welcome, Eddie. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Nice to be with you, Ella.
No, we're really looking forward to hearing kind of your history, what you're up to now, and yeah, really your career in themed entertainment. So I wanted to take a look back really where it all began. I understand you wanted to work in design your whole life, and in particular, the dream was wanting to work for Walt Disney Imagineering. When you were a teenager, you built a 1 to 200 scale model of the Disneyland Park in Anaheim. Can you tell us a bit more about your background and how you came to work in the industry?
Sure. I mean, for many of us, Disneyland or the Disney parks became kind of a childhood obsession. And like you mentioned, I did build a model of the park when I was, 12, 13 years old at 1 to 200 scale, just getting business cards from local businesses and cutting them up. And WED, as it was called back then, before it was called Imagineering, had actually been kind enough to send me a blueprint of Disneyland. So I was able to work. I think that's why I'm wearing glasses now, because my eyes were crossed after building this micro model, and my father bet me that I wouldn't finish it. But when you pretend to be sick in school, you can hide out in the room and finish the model. But yeah, you have that passion. I do remember where I was as a little kid when I told my friend, I think I was probably like 5 years old, I wanted to be, someone who thinks of the ideas for those great rides at Disneyland. So as with many of us in our professions, your desires start very young.
And what was kind of your career progression? Where did you go kind of job to job in those early years?
Sure. Well, I got married very young. Got married about 19 years old. Still married to the same person today, I might add. So I'm proud of that. And I was working as a salesperson. You have to have a living wage. I was selling washers and dryers, believe it or not, at the Sears company, and not very happy with that. But I learned a lot, and was able to sketch storyboards on the backs of the sales checks. So I was always thinking of rides and really wanted to do that. And, at the time, I was making good money doing it. And a route into Disney meant the mail room or the model shop, as they say. And that would have been a pay cut. And my wife forbid that. So what ended up happening was I thought, well, where else could I go? What else could I do? So I started pitching rides to the number 3 theme park, Disney World, Disneyland, and then, of course, Knott's Berry Farm here in Southern California. And I was able to pitch my way with just hand-drawn sketches and a lot of energy into a job there, believe it or not, as a designer. And they recognized I didn't have architectural experience. I was only 20, 21 years old at the time. But the architect there recognized I had this raw talent. And I thought that was a wonderful thing, because in today's world, it would be very hard, the way that algorithms and computers edit people's resumes. Back then, they looked you in the eye and they saw your passion and they looked at the ideas on the merits of the creative, not the experience so much, and said, well, this guy could grow. And so Rick Campbell was the gentleman who hired me there. And a place like Knott's Berry Farm was run by a family. So they allowed me to come in and actually I was designing a ride within the first 6 months of being there. We were building something. I mean, just imagine going from selling washers to building an attraction that early.
Oh, fantastic. And what would I know you touched on your point with the algorithms. I know you've blogged for blooloop on this topic before, how sometimes the algorithm stops attractions getting the best talent. I mean, it can overlook people who don't have the exact degree from the exact university. What do you say to young folks who are starting in themed entertainment, how can they overcome that? Do they need to make the right connections? Do they need to introduce themselves?
I would say the best thing is like the Themed Entertainment Association, like TEA,
Mhm.
or trying to reach people directly. I remember as a young man, I would go out and watch Big Thunder Mountain Railroad being built at Disneyland and see Tony Baxter. And by the way, that's the gentleman who eventually hired me at Imagineering. And I would walk up and wait at the little rail and watch him. And then he was so kind. And I've always tried to imitate his own personal generosity with others as far as sharing information, not trying to uh, hold on to how you got there, and really try to help others. And he was very helpful to me. And he says, hey, Eddie, you got to build a model, you've got to do this. And he kind of guided me a little bit. And it's so funny, those little seeds that were planted by making a personal connection. And I know TEA has cocktail parties, IAPA, different industries. Interning is good if you can. Making personal connections where they know you is so important. Even in sales, they say the customer buys you. And your ability and your passion to work all night, that's so much more valuable than a degree in something, unless it's an engineering degree or something that's technical. But in the creative field, people have to know that you're going to stick to your guns and really fight for great ideas, and that you're willing to work hard. And how are they going to know that unless you're out there, meeting people one-on-one?
Exactly. And when you can't meet one-on-one virtually, as of right now.
Well, right now, hopefully that'll all change. But even virtual mixers and things like this, and reaching out, those are important things to do. And I felt that, my father gave me some good advice on the knots situation. I called my dad. I'm still only like 20 years old. Like, Dad, no one wants to buy ideas. No one wants to talk to me. They don't want to look at my stuff. And my dad said, well, how long have you been trying at knots? I go, well, weeks. He just won't see me. My dad says, look, why don't you just do this? People may not want to hire you, but maybe they'll critique. Everyone's a critic. Just say, look, I will leave you alone forever if you just look at my portfolio and give me some pointers. Show me what's wrong with it.
Mhm.
Give me, just give me a sense, critique it. So that's how I approached it. I changed my tactics. Rick Campbell says, look, you don't even have to buy me lunch. He didn't want to sit with me through lunch. You can imagine that. So I don't even want to sit through me for lunch. So I would bring my portfolio in, and my dad says, look, now his expectations are low. Whatever you think, son, that you can do, whatever this right idea you have is, now you need to knock it out of the park. You need to come in there and blow him away with what you can do. And that's kind of what happened in a relative sense. Rick looked at the axiometric drawing I had done, which is like taking the roof off of the ride, and showed the track plans and how it all worked. And so he saw, and frankly, it was the Disney fan in me that I was importing into that process. He said, wow, you can think of these things. Now, I'm the architect here, but I have a rec for assistant project designer. If you sit in the corner and just feed me these kinds of drawings and ideas, I could help make those into a reality. Mm-hmm. So sometimes humility is a huge part of all of this. We have to say, I'm not coming in to lay my masterpiece on you and you just need to love it and do it. Sometimes it's good just to come in and say, what can I do here? How can I help? How can I learn? Mm-hmm. How can I take what you've given me, even if it's a food cart, and make it a great food cart,
Absolutely. Well, let's talk a bit more about your time at Disney. So from beginning, and then as you got more and more projects under your belt, I know we spoke that Tony Baxter was the one to bring you on. So from Main Street USA at Disneyland Paris. I believe it was your suggestion as well to add the hotel to the entrance of the park. Was that right? Or on the team?
Well, these things are sort of accidents. They're not always conscious. And sometimes, and I find that here's another piece of advice for young ones too, is that filling needs is important than just having a vision. So you could bring your big vision for a ride or attraction in and say, well, the world needs this. And frankly, my big idea at Knott's that I got hired for never got built.
Right.
And I was about to lose my job at Knott's, and then ended up walking over and trying to fill a need, which was an attraction that had issues with safety, and coming up with a new idea that they could change the vehicles to save them from having that issue and remarket the attraction. So, filling needs has always been something important, in the design process.
Mm-hmm.
So
Awesome.
I've always tried to apply that, to no matter where I was going. So you talk about getting hired at Disney. I think a lot of the attractions and things I got to work on throughout my career were filling a need in one area or another, or working for another. Now, in the case of Tony hiring me, Tony looked and saw that I had been doing a Victorian themed project, something very 19th century, very Jules Verne, at another company, which was Gary Goddard's Landmark Entertainment. I was hired from Knott's to Landmark. And strategically, just like, I'm advising young people to do, is continue sending your work to these people. It may not be a job today, but it might be something later. And thankfully to Tony, he saw that, wow, this Eddie, he might be able to be a good person to grow into that position. So I was given the Main Street of Disneyland Paris, and kind of coming into WED, kind of in a vice president design director position. So in beginning this Main Street, weather was a problem in France. And you asked about the hotel. So the weather was a problem in France. And so one of the requirement was to cover people waiting to buy tickets. Now, prior to the internet and cell phones and online, people are in line to buy these tickets. You got to cover them up. So imagine the size of a roof that would have to cover all those ticket booths and the waiting lines. So the roof came in at tens of millions of dollars. And there's no way we could afford this. There's no budget for that. So in necessity, again, just like solving the legal problems with this ride, you learn to be a solver. And you say, well, what could you do? So in drawing the roof, making a big flat roof that was acres wide, looking at the Grand Floridian Hotel in Florida and the Del Coronado in California, the beautiful roofs and articulate nature. Nina Ray Vaughn did a very nice painting, and I did an elevation showing another level. Mm-hmm. Could you put something on that roof? Could you do something? Could you put suites up there? So this evolution of doing that is what began the idea of a hotel. And of course, it took a few steroids in the process and turned into what we see today. Mm-hmm. But Michael Eisner looking at the roof and saying, how much is it? We could never pay that for just a roof. So I was trying to find a subsidy for that.
Mm-hmm. But that's
the
where
story.
The best things come from, isn't it? Finding solutions, but also creating something really magical in that way as well.
I mean, sad to say, most of my career has been as a bit of a solver, and I'm not usually handed by clients blank sheets of paper, ever. I'm always handed, or like our company will be the third person in when something isn't creative enough, or it's really not working, or or there's just something that's missing, and it's kind of a process of analysis and then kicking everything up a few notches or tuning an experience. So Ella, there's a lot of fun in solving. Mm-hmm. A blank sheet of paper sometimes is scarier because you really don't know where to begin. But when there's something that's not working and adjusting it or enhancing it or reimagining it, to me, that's fun because you can take a client from something that's not making any money and turn it into something that's a hit, and that's a good story, isn't it?
Well, thinking about projects like that where you've kind of turned it around for the client, or if it was a blank page, are there any standout projects from your time at Disney that you're just so proud of, or like you say, you really did solve a solution for that particular problem? Any projects?
Well, I mean, of anything I worked on there, the thing that I'm the most proud of, and just because I'm proud of it doesn't mean it's not a team effort, and that many minds and many people are part of pulling all of these things off. So let's just start there. But we were faced with a difficult problem in Tokyo, Japan. The Tokyo Disney Sea Park was in development. And if you've seen pictures of that or visited that park, it is truly a jaw-dropping, thematic, astounding experience. Mm-hmm. And the Oriental Land Company that owns Tokyo Disneyland and commissions Imagineering to develop things for them was concerned, and justifiably so, that when this new park opens, it wasn't going to bring so much of a new audience as it was going to devour the existing audience of Tokyo Disneyland. So you'd have the same customers leaving the old park empty, which would now become old hat, so to speak, and just going to the new park. So in a defensive way, they wanted a new attraction that was going to be so remarkable and so great that it would prevent people from abandoning the park. It would open at the same time as the new one. Imagine that. One little ride's going to compete with an entire park and keep both of them busy, because they wanted to have people stay overnight and go to two parks, even though the one had been there for decades. How do you do that? And of course, the Oriental Land Company was very used to mining the existing technologies that Imagineering had already done. So they loved taking things off the shelf that were proven and maybe building a sequel. Well, the timing was not great. I had been put in charge of the master planning of the old park, or the existing park, Tokyo Disneyland. So under my stewardship, creatively, it was, what are we going to do? And so you look at popular characters. And so Winnie the Pooh, from a financial perspective, and of course the culture in Japan is very much of one of giving. They don't wait for Christmas. When you come back from going somewhere, you bring omiyage or a gift to every single person. And so that really was a lot of the business model that helps you build a new ride. I didn't know this, but it was really true. So you want to put an attraction in that generates lots of merchandise, lots of love. And of course, every piece of merchandise is an allure to bring the next person back. You know, so Winnie the Pooh being the most profitable and even more recognizable than Mickey Mouse in many ways at that time. What do you do with that? Well, Winnie the Pooh, if you watched the films or the cartoons, not a lot happens in the cartoons. They're aimed very, very young, and rides have to be action packed. The exciting rides happen to you. So there's only one technology I could find that was being developed, but maybe we could do something with it. And it was called the Aquatopia, which was a ride without tracks, but it was in about an inch of water, and there were bumper cars, basically bumper boats outdoors. Nice, good, like a C level attraction in A through E. And so I thought, well, what if you took that technology and adapted it to a dark ride? What if a dark ride had no tracks? Imagine the things you could do. And it's frankly a platform. It's a new way of thinking about everything. Now, looking at the Clue cartoons, you had a blustery day, you had Tigger bouncing. This way you could have things happen to guests in a way they've never experienced. So I was very proud of the team of people, and we had a very difficult time getting programmers at the time. We were shorthanded, but the team really rose to the challenge of creating this new experience that opened in 2000. And I had hoped at the time that that would become the roadmap, and really kind of fell on my sword, hopefully, to, at the time, to make that the newest initiative in rides and attractions. And even though it didn't happen then, the timing, the management really wasn't into that at the time. They wanted to sort of repeat in the other parks what had been done. I'm very proud of the fact that it's sort of become the new gold standard. It's the new black, so to speak, or the new simulator in the trend in successful rides, from Mystic Manor to, Ratatouille, to all these different things. That free ranging system came of age 20 years later. So sometimes, you're ahead of your time, or that Pooh ride did, according to the annual report, become the ride that did maintain the attendance that year. And it did help the Oriental Land Company balance those two parks. And it's a credit to the team, but I'm proud of them. And I'm proud of the fact that we were able to do the future with the Oriental Land Company, who really wasn't into having something completely unique like that. But I think that also whetted their appetite for more unique attractions and taking some risk. So anyway.
And getting those international guests, it's not just a copycat from other parks, it's getting the share.
And this is not the Winnie the Pooh attraction you'll find in California, the other place. It truly is, how did they do that kind of attraction? And it's online. You can watch videos of it if you want to. But I'm very proud of the kind of spearheading that. I guess they call it wireless rides, free ranging rides.
Yeah,
You know,
who'd have thought Winnie the Pooh
trackless.
would be the first one to have that as well?
Very unsuspecting, but you also keep the story very simple. And we went to the effects department and the R&D department and said, what have you guys got you haven't done before? Let's just, like the film Mary Poppins, let's take everything we've ever learned in the movies and put it in one film. That's what Walt Disney did. And truly, we try to do that with the Winnie the Pooh attraction. Make everything happen to you, the guest.
Mm-hmm. Oh, fantastic. And then, so that's one that obviously came to fruition. But are there any projects that you worked on that didn't quite make it? They never got approval, but you really thought, oh, I wish that had gone through.
Sure. Well, it's kind of funny you talk about unbuilt attractions. I believe that some attractions should be unbuilt. Not every idea is a great idea. And in this business, if you're coming into this business, you have to realize the batting average, could be rather low. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it should be low because not every idea is perfect in every way. And there's certain filters that prevent bad ideas from being $100 million failures. Or, look at how expensive attractions are. Yeah, there's a few out there that I would have loved to have seen get built. There's little pet projects that are small that I thought would have been fun. We did a rocket-powered motorcycle experience for Tokyo Disneyland that could have worked. But it's kind of funny. I have to say too that some of these attractions, they require an iterative process. Mm-hmm. And you may build a demonstrator version or a mock-up. And the first round of the mock-up, there's going to be things wrong with it. And sometimes management abandons it because they ride it and they say, well, it's not fast enough. It's not this enough and not that enough. But really, kind of, you need to invest in say, several iterations and say, well, okay, what if we fixed this and this? Would this have worked? And would that have worked? So sometimes you have to have management that's really on board that says, we're going to be in this for the haul. We do believe that most of the world has never ridden a motorcycle, but aspirationally would love the wind in their hair and they would love to have driven a motorcycle. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of interesting. Universal did a great job with a motorcycle themed attraction that is very popular. Mm-hmm. But after doing this first attraction at Knott's called the Wacky Soapbox Racer, which involved competition, I'd always been a very much of a fan of competitive attractions and trying to find ways to let kids do it because it was such a hit at Knott's Berry Farm. So I guess that's just a bit of the unbuilt world that I would have liked to have seen. We also did a project after I left Disney for Disney, which came out before the iPhone, and we were asked to develop a device back in the days of personal digital assistants. Do you remember something called the Palm Pilot?
I think I might be too young.
Okay, well, there used to be digital assistants, like in the days of BlackBerry and Palm Pilot. Before the iPhone was invented, we were asked to say, what would a digital device be like? You could take the Disney experience outside of the Disney park. And we'd actually done it. And we shot a television commercial showing how it would be used and documentary. And we really put this thing together. And frankly, if I thought one thing could have been done, it wouldn't have been a ride at all. It was this very, very forward-looking piece of technology from about the year 2000 that predated the iPhone that I think had Disney done it really would have lined their coffers, perhaps working with Apple. But timing is everything. Steve Jobs and Michael Eisner were not best of friends. Had Bob Iger perhaps been there with a different relationship, it might have happened. You never know. So I think really, if I had one regret, it would have been a project more like that. I won't get into all the details of it, but but a lot of what I had been working on was leading edge technologies like interactive foods or things like this that we had been developing.
Oh, awesome. We've actually got another speaker called Bompus and Pa at V-Expo who do all of that kind of interactive, immersive food experiences. So you should check them out if you've got time.
Well, yeah. And I mean, today at the company, I've never tried to limit what we do. I just try to take my Imagineering process and apply it to different industries. Like the airplane behind you is one of our designs. And that won an award, and we're not known as an airplane company, but there are a lot of competitors that were, and I'm happy that we were able to do that. Yeah. But developing interactive technologies for parks, looking about COVID, all kinds of different things. And Imagineering is not limited to attractions. It's taking engineering and imagination and leading engineers with good ideas. And that's really what it's about.
Mm-hmm. And you spoke earlier about kind of reimagining attractions. So over the last few years, Disney's reimagined several beloved attractions, so including things like IP overlays on the Tower of Terror, becoming Guardians of the Galaxy, but also updating historical attractions like Pirates of the Caribbean, and most recently Splash Mountain, to be better suited in the modern age. I know Disney fans are possibly the most passionate fans in the world. As designers, how do you take that consideration, the need to evolve an attraction, but against the potential uproar to changing a fan's favorite ride?
Right. Well, Walt Disney himself said Disneyland will never be completed as long as imagination is left in the world. And what he loved about a theme park versus a film is once the film is in a can, it's locked. It's never going to be a different movie. But Disneyland can continue to grow. And what Walt Disney did is he sat outside. He was his own focus group, right? He sat outside the attraction and he watched the reactions of the guests. And as times change and the stories change and so forth and people's tastes change, he would always evolve the attraction. So you can see Guardians of the Galaxy replace the Twilight Zone, which is a television show from the 1950s. So those things evolve. But I would just say that if you're changing a scene in an attraction or whatever it is you're going to do, you really need to hold the bar high. You don't just remove the scene and say, oh, well, that's objectionable now, and we're just going to take it out and leave a gaping hole. No, you want to rethink and put something better and more entertaining than was ever there before. And I think in the case of the Guardians of the Galaxy, look at the music that's in that attraction now and how people really love hearing the 80s music that's fueling the movement of the elevators in that attraction. So people not only forgive you, fans are hoping and expecting things to get better. And you want to improve it. I would also say Space Mountain. I mean, I was part of putting the Dick Dale rock and roll track, the first music on Space Mountain that ever been put. But as tastes and times change, you want to change the music. And now it's a platform, Space Mountain, for Ghost Galaxy and Star Wars and, the Red Hot Chili Peppers and all kinds of different music to reflect and allow the fans to see this. Even seasonal attractions have become popular where the fans love the idea of seeing the attraction, change clothes for a season to be a little bit different. So I think it's okay as long as the bar is held high and you're always really providing more value than was there before, a better story and more fun.
Absolutely. So earlier you mentioned COVID. So I know it's been a really trying year for the attractions industry with COVID closing down most attractions around the world. Now that they're starting to open up again, a lot of parks are wrestling with the idea of maintaining guest safety through new procedures, equipment, operations, but they want to maintain the story of the ride or the land or the park. And I know you've written a lot again on the blooloop blog and a lot in your personal news.
So much.
How can they keep the magic for guests and keep them coming back?
Right, exactly. Well, the first thing is coming to the realization after spending 40 years designing themed environments where you're focused on the manhole covers being perfect and supporting the 1890s theme and the music not being any faster than the guest walking. I mean, these are surgically created, delicate environments. I believe themed experiences are delicate. You put one element in there that blows it, and it ruins the experience for everyone. It's kind of like if you were watching a medieval show, I don't know, the Game of Thrones or Robin Hood or one of these shows, and you saw them all wearing surgical masks. Wouldn't that kind of distract from the reality of that film? No director would accept it, right?
Remember?
Yeah. So when I look at themed environments, I see the distancing, and also, there's a psychological aspect to going to a theme park that all of us are in the dark, oohing and awing at the fireworks, aren't we? We're all part of a unity. I mean, it is a small world after all, just for that day. And that you can be a child again with your kid. But when you're wary of everybody else and saying, who just touched that doorknob? I'm not going to touch that doorknob if you just touch. You're creating a hospital. And what operator can really in a way that reassures anyone, continually clean with sprays and UV lighting and all this. I mean, we are treating an elephant, and really it's the wrong approach in my, opinion. We got to get the hospital out of the theme park because you're diminishing the value. The more things you close, like fireworks and characters and all these things, right? You got to charge more money for less people because you can't cut the cost. So the value for the guest, it goes down. The moments that make a theme to park experience are dying because you say, well, I'm not going to spend 10 grand to bring my kid out for things like this. So I think we recognize, at least I believe, that we have to take a drastic measure. And what is the measure? Doing things more like an airport and less like a hospital. And if you think of an airport where once you're screened for terrorism or safety, we'll just say, and you're in the terminal, Ella is no longer worried about getting on that flight. She's not nearly as skeptical of the other people walking around the terminal. She's not looking around, looking at people's suitcases or carry-ons for wires and alarm clocks and thinking there could be a bomb or something. You're no longer wary. Now you're going to relax. And frankly, isn't air travel anxious enough without that threat? I was anxious about it anyway. Forget about, having the threat of terror. So when I looked at that and said, is there a bubble we can create for the employees and the cast members and the guests to enter through a screening process? But what I saw did not satisfy me. When you put a gun to someone's head and take their temperature and still treat them like they're sick, what does that tell you about the credibility of the temperature test? I don't know. It doesn't. So started investigating technologies, and there's some technologies now, and there's three factors. The capacity. If we don't get back to high capacity and sharing experiences and all of that, there's no business. And of course, there's no fun. We got to get back to where we were, when you're spending a fortune, you're going to come home with a fortune of memories. You got to be able to do that too, right? So having a screening process, and we're looking at a technology now, and many of them, but there are some very promising ones that use like a terahertz technology that actually can see the virus in your breath.
Wow.
Which is the definition of being contagious. If it comes out of you and it's in you, then we know that you're a threat. That's the definition of needing a mask, right? If you can see it and see it within 60 seconds or less and have an over 90% or even over 95% success rate in tracking that and showing the guests that you've seen it or not seen it, and then make a fun process, Ella. What if you walked into, a screening process that looked like a steampunk room, and you had a little breathalyzer and you stuck it into a machine, and it's a bubble machine, and as you blow, you see this magical bubble appear, and then suddenly you're inside of it. There's bubbles all around you, and as they're popping, it's clearing you because you can see what's in your breath. And when your family is done, they're already looking at your bags in that 60 seconds. You're not standing and watching the guy do that. You go, oh, there's my stuff. My kids love that. That was so great. And now I know I'm not only do I know I'm clean, I can see the other people over there. Their bubbles are burst. They're okay. And the guy that had the little red bubble that wasn't green over there, they've safely taken him away. And they're going to test him a second time to make sure the machine's not creating an error. Or they're going to look at that. And perhaps people have a test at home that they do one version of this test before they even get on the plane. So if they protect themselves properly, they have a very, very confident and high confidence that when they get to the park, they're not going to be disappointed. Because that would be a terrible thing, wouldn't it, to turn away your kid at the gate? You want to have some assurance at home. So it's an experience. We have to think of an experience and say, wow, and maybe it's different for a sporting event or different for something else. The mascot from the home team takes you through the process. Anyway, I want to make it fun and make it safe and raise the bar high. We're going to put a higher value on human life than business, but do both.
And I was going to say, you could also
let that hug happen again.
You could do Halloween overlays. You could do, you could change it so every time repeat visitors as well. There's much more fun to be had with it. But I guess, so the technology that you referenced, that's coming live now?
It's in testing now.
Testing, wow.
So we're working with that company now. But remember, one thing we do is we help clients weed through the snake oil. And there's companies already retracting their claims as we speak today. about, oh, this disinfectant works, now it doesn't. We believe in clinical testing in the field, not in a laboratory, because theme parks have everything you could think could go wrong does go wrong. Someone's in a wheelchair, they're too low, someone's too high, someone too this, someone too that, the kid, whatever. You have to test these things and beta test them. It's human life, which is the most important thing of all. So we want to help the client sort through it, create a turnkey experience, and put something together that actually works and meets their business plan. And that even the cost per test is a piece of it. The capacity is a piece of it. So there's a little, there's, before you say the words market ready, there's a little bit of diligence that needs to be done, because you don't want to go out there and fail. And that would be a very bad thing to do. So I'm really, as you can tell, excited about all this. Yeah. And people say to me too, Ella, they go, all the analysts call and they go, well, Eddie, when there's a vaccine, you won't have to worry about this. You're creating something that there's no real need for. It's all going away. I've heard this ad nauseum. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think when there's a vaccine that you're going to have no need for any screening at all?
Well, I think it's tricky. I think if it's not this, there'll be something in another lifetime. Some pandemics will come and go every few 300 years or whatever. So there'll be another in there.
I completely agree with you. And once you've shown that you could weaponize a virus, you need to, you need some new normal. I mean, look at Jaws. The movie was out for 45 years this year, and people are still afraid to go in the water. And that was a rubber shark. This is not a rubber shark. So we want to reassure people. We want to prove to people that they are safe. And even the airport, we are at the lowest terror level ever. In America, the number of people, casualties from terror, domestic terror, are far lower than COVID-19. Yet don't people still want to be reassured when they get on that airplane? So I think there's a new normal that has some level of reassurance. And of course, to an insurance company for a theme park or a stadium or anything, to be unprotected, that seems to me like a liability. You want to be able to do something. So obviously the answers will make themselves evident, but we believe that this technology that we're looking at also creates a library of other viruses as it's testing. So it can adapt to see other things. So it's not just a one-trick pony. It would become a library of viruses and various things that it can track and see. So it's protection for the long term. That's what future-proofing is all about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you don't have to go through this again.
Are you proposing then, so this is all for the kind of bubble before you get in the park, would you propose no changes to the inside of the park at all in terms of design for future rides and things?
There may be nice precautionary things to reassure the guest, but to me, the goal, if you want to set the goalpost very high, it's to, from the guest, whatever the guest experiences and sees. In other words, could you have facial recognition that takes temperature inside the park just to continue to reassure and prove to ourselves and watch what's going on and monitor? Yeah, but if you have a high enough success rate at the door, you don't need to do that. But what would be the harm in using surface cleaners and things like this to always ensure it? Isn't good business just, haven't we learned something from this? You would hate to have other viruses spread that are the next virus and have it start at a theme park. Why? Disneyland was always known for being clean. Theme parks, as opposed to carnivals, are thought of as clean places. You can be reassured with your family. Let's think of reassurance as part of the fun,
And then, so that's a lot of your work now with the COVID things, kind of advising your clients. Can you talk a bit about your projects, like the exotic jets and kind of brand experiences that you've been working on?
Well, design is very exciting right now. I can't talk about who it's for and so forth, but if I had to, we're doing one or actually two aerospace projects right now. But we like to do sort of things you haven't seen.
Right.
And one of them is we're finishing off a project with a client that wanted a plane that he calls Surf Force One. And it's a Malibu sort of surfing inspired aircraft that has all the beauty of the rare woods that you would find on the early surfboards and the finishes and things, without it being literal. It's a beautiful gesture toward the sort of mind space of Malibu, if you will, and the thought of surfing, because the gentleman loves to fly around the world surfing.
Oh,
And so that
sounds
was his idea. But we take it to the, we have a logo for this gentleman and all of it. It's on our website.
yeah.
But we try to take what the client wishes and dreams and then really make it three-dimensional, kick it up a few notches and sort of exceed expectation.
Yeah.
We just finished a Porsche project for a client that they wanted the ultimate Porsche dealership. So when you walk in, you're standing on a glass floor because underneath you is something we, as a working title, called the Wonderground. And it's a complete classic Porsche museum where you could even buy some of the classic Porsches there on display. But it's the idea of connecting the story of the 911's evolution to the new products today, which are fantastic, that Porsche is putting out. And that's from Galpin Motors, they're one of our clients. And these are people that we've done Aston Martin projects for. And it's always about reimagining and exceeding customers' expectations, not just doing retail in the traditional way. And of course, people can click and buy now, right? So you have to do something that makes it worth it to get in the car and go out and see that product. So I think that that's a big kind of future for us, is taking existing retail like the car showroom and reimagining it, or a retail store, and making it worth visiting, by enhancing the story of the product.
Because you do see these big car showrooms in really places you wouldn't imagine. Like, I think, can't remember which company it was, but one of them had a shop on Times Square, or was it Fifth Avenue, where it's a huge showroom and there's not a single car in it. It's an experiential showroom, so you can do all sorts of kind of interactive experiences, but you can't see a physical car. It's all kind of around you.
I always find that interesting. But if I was, physically there, and I'm making the commitment to physically go there, there's nothing that can take the place in experience of design of the real textures, the real upholstery. A photograph of the upholstery, then you touch the leather. Sometimes you touch the leather and it feels like plastic and it has some kind of coating on it, or you feel that softness. And really, in high margin products, luxury products, the textures are critical. The visuals of how these things go together. Rendering is good, but boy, when you sit in the car, don't you smell it? You do. Why is new car smell something that's very sought after? So I think it's good to have one, like a showroom where people can sort of touch it. Like Tesla's done a great job with that. And Porsche does a great job with that. Different brands do. But certainly connecting the aspiration is always important, Ella. You really want to do that.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Well, I think that's all about we have time for. But it's been so interesting hearing your history, your favorite projects, your kind of career, but also your thoughts on COVID. I know it's everyone's trying to kind of tackle how best to approach and go forward. So it's really interesting to hear your thoughts on all of that too.
Well, thank you for letting me ramble on like this.
No, not at all. No, it's been great having you on. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you. And to all of you readers at blooloop, thank you for, if you have been reading the articles I've been posting and so forth, thank you so much for your comments and, contributing back. I love the feedback. So thank you, Ella. Appreciate being on with you. Thanks again.
Thank you. That's great.
Bye.